Hey everybody, Dr. Dave Marquis here, and I wanted to talk to those individuals who at one time or other had body parts removed. The body part that I want to talk to you about is your tonsils. Sometimes, like when I was a kid and you had tonsillitis or repeat strep throat, inner ear infections where it was repeatedly causing you pressure and it was actually impacting your speech as a kid. It wasn't uncommon for the doctor to say, hey, you know what, let's take these tonsils out. It's going to allow for drainage to improve and they'll be able to learn how to hear and talk better. And that's true. It actually made sense, but sadly it removed a component of your immune system that had a lot of downstream impact relative to your upper respiratory function. A lot of folks that had that removed have a higher propensity towards upper respiratory infections and even asthma. A larger problem that I saw come out of that and we're living with today, because you took out basically a fire alarm in your body that was notifying you that something's inflaming you, the alarm went off, but the fire didn't go out. And so many of these people that had their tonsils removed, that was the early warning sign that they were intolerant to certain things that they were consuming. So their diet really didn't change, so they basically just played kick the can. And what I've seen in a lot of those folks is that the dietary intolerances down the line have turned into other inflammatory states, and many of those pop up as autoimmune conditions. So I'll see things like Hashimoto's or rheumatoid or scleroderma or lupus, you name the autoimmune. So many of those are related early in life to food intolerances that your body starts to mistake for mixed connective tissue or our endocrine system. So something to think about, because when we start to remove body parts willy-nilly and say, hey, we didn't actually need this, that's not exactly true. There's always a purpose for these body parts. What do you do if you've had your tonsils removed? Well, first of all, figure out what you might have been intolerant to originally. Get a food antibody test. I find that that's really valuable for any human being, and it's not like the gold plate that's going to say this is what you can and eat this only. It's not that well defined. Food antibody testing comes in a lot of different varieties. So if you're going to spend the money and time to get poked and look at that, do the best one that you can. Don't spend time on a RAS test. RAS testing, where they do the pinprick on the shoulder or the back, they're really looking at IgE antibodies, and you do get a little bit of IgG response. What I mean by that is IgE is a true allergy. And if you have a true allergy, most people know it. Usually say, yeah, when I eat strawberries, the roof of my mouth itches, or if I eat peanuts, I can't breathe anymore. Those are true allergies. Most people know that. You might pick up a couple of things that, oh wow, look at that, I'm allergic to dust mites or to Johnson grass. You might pick up some of those things on the IgE, but it really doesn't help you dietarily. That's why I like to look at blood draws for IgG and IgA. Even that arena of food antibody testing does have its weaknesses. The utility, in my opinion, is that you can look at food families that will show up. One of the arguments that I'll hear from other practitioners is, well, when you look at that, you're basically just studying what they're eating right now. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but if you find that a preponderance of food that show up on that test happen to represent one food family, well, there's a good probability that genetically you don't make the enzymes to break that stuff down well. And so that might be the truth for you relative to dietary habits moving forward. And so I find that it's very useful to get a broad picture, and for a period of about 6 to 12 months, hone your diet in on the information that comes from the food antibody test, and it generally, I'd say 90% of the time, has a profound effect in reducing systemic inflammation. Hey, that's a win, right? Because when your inflammation is lower, all body systems start to function better. Get a food panel and figure out what's going on. Realize that if you had your tonsils out, you probably went through rounds of antibiotics over the course of time leading up to that moment, and maybe a little bit afterwards. Every round of antibiotics we use disrupts our microbiome, and our body doesn't automatically hit the reset switch. It doesn't just fill in the gap. Actually, undesirable species start to move in, and that's where restoring your flora comes in really handy. So I like to have a broad approach on that. Make sure that the flora have the appropriate home to live in, and so that has to do with your body's pH. So we use acid, bile, oral probiotics, and suppository probiotics so that you address the whole pipe. Now, in other videos, I've talked about the different microbiomes that we have. We have it on our skin, we have it in our nose and mouth, so the nasopharynx. We have it in our lungs, we have it in our small intestine, large intestines, and our genitourinary tract. There's different species that live in each of those regions. Sticking with the same probiotic over and over again really doesn't help your body create this biodiversity that's necessary. What I'll put in the bottom section of this video is just some ideas on how to rotate probiotics, because I encourage people to do that and hit all systems and make sure that the pH is right for those systems. Now, one other point that I'll put out, sometimes people have had their tonsils removed because they got so big and damaged over time that you had tonsil stones living in there. And tonsil stones are essentially bacteria that are excreting little calcific biofilms that are protecting them to stay housed inside you, and they smell. And so people will sometimes get those tonsils taken out because they have chronic halitosis or bad breath. Sometimes those tonsils have gotten so large that they encroach on your airway, and so you have sleep apnea. There are good reasons to remove them if you've allowed the train to derail that far. Once it's gone, it doesn't mean that that flora has automatically hit the reset switch. So you have to be proactive in taking steps to make sure that you change your flora in a beneficial way. Think about understanding what foods you might have been intolerant to in the beginning that started to create this response. Work on restoring your immune system's function by working on pH and your flora, and then rinse, wash, and repeat. The more that you do that, you'll tend to reduce your inflammation, and you'll find that multiple systems start to work in a feed-forward fashion instead of that negative feedback loop. I hope this has been helpful for you and motivates you to take some action in terms of restoring your own immune function if yours has been compromised because of removal that you didn't necessarily want to happen when you were younger. Be well.